I smelled lemon cleaner before I opened my eyes, the kind of bright, antiseptic scent that doesn't belong at 2 in the morning. A line of light leaked under our bedroom door, and the brass chair by the window was no longer angled toward the street. It faced the bed, as if someone had pulled it up to watch us sleep. For a second I forgot we were living in Ethan's childhood home. I reached for my ring dish and brushed the edge of a glass coaster with a pressed sunflower. My ring dish sat there too, rotated neatly so the small chip on its rim faced away. I hadn't left it that way. "Ruth," I whispered. Ethan rolled onto his stomach and dragged a pillow over his head. The floorboard outside gave a weary sigh. The light disappeared. The house held its breath. I lay there counting to 30, then 60, because that's what you do when you're a guest in a place that isn't sure it wants you. We'd moved in 2 weeks earlier after our apartment's ceiling bloomed with mold. 2, 3 months, tops, Ethan said while the landlord apologized through swollen plaster. "We'll save for a down payment. My parents have the space. It'll be good." He said good like a promise. Ruth met us on the porch with a rag in her hand. She is not a large woman, but everything about her feels efficient. Silver bob tucked behind her ears, an uncreased collar, lips that press into a pencil line when she's concentrating on crumbs. Shoes in the mudroom. Laundry on Tuesdays. Towels are color-coded, blue upstairs, green downstairs. I like surfaces to breathe. She didn't hug me. She air-kissed near my cheek and looked past me into our car to count boxes. Ethan's father, Harold, waved from behind her like a man who knows better than to get between a system and its operator. "Welcome," he said, a small warm word placed on a cold table. The house hums with tidiness. The pantry wears labels: rice, flour, sugar, pasta. The upstairs hall smells of lavender with something sharper beneath. In Ethan's old room, now ours, Ruth left fresh sheets and an extra pillow that felt like starch and rules. "We're glad to have you," she said, and the sentence balanced so carefully it made me hold my breath. At first I told myself I was being dramatic. New place, old history. Houses settle. But then it wasn't the house. The chair by the window shifted 3 inches. My hair tie, left looped around the lamp, moved to the dresser and sat coiled like a tiny black snake. A sweater I folded at the bed's foot vanished until I found it hung at the far end of the closet, sleeves aligned like soldiers. "Mom's particular," Ethan said. He kissed my forehead. "She's just trying to help you get organized." "I'm organized," I said. "I don't need anyone coming into our room at night." "She doesn't," he said, certain before the facts. "You've been exhausted." The next night I took a picture. I lined up my foundation, moisturizer, and night cream on the nightstand, labels all facing left. I turned the chipped rim of my ring dish toward me and set my ring at 4 o'clock on the dish. I took a flash photo so the glass would map where everything was. At 2:13, I woke to lemon cleaner again, the floor breathing under the door. I kept my eyes closed. There is an art to pretending to sleep. Relax your jaw, let your tongue float. Keep your breathing steady when your heart stutters because someone is standing 6 feet from your face. The door whispered wider. Fabric moved. A careful hand adjusted something on the dresser with 2 soft taps, glass on glass. The footsteps receded. The light went black. When I opened my eyes, the photos were there. In the first, the labels faced left. In the second, taken 20 minutes later, the ring sat at 6 o'clock. The moisturizer had been quarter-turned, so the ingredients list pointed at the wall. I showed Ethan in the morning. He pushed his hair back, trying to be fair and to make this not a thing. "Maybe you bumped it," he said. "Maybe you got up and forgot you got up." "I don't sleepwalk," I said. "I think your mom is coming into our room." "She wouldn't," he said gently, as if correcting a child who thought the sky folds. "She has boundaries. You don't know her like I do." Boundaries. The word tasted like dust. Because the truth was, she had boundaries, hers. She defined them, enforced them, lived by them. And we were inside her lines, not the other way around. I told myself to let it go, but the next night I couldn't. I stayed awake, lying on my side, watching the door. At some point Ethan's breathing deepened, and the house shifted. And then, with the inevitability of tide, I smelled lemon cleaner again. The knob turned. A figure slipped inside, pale hair catching the sliver of hallway light. Ruth. She didn't look at me. She moved to the dresser, straightened the bottles, lifted the ring dish, set it down again with a click. She smoothed the blanket at the bed's edge, then leaned toward Ethan, brushing her fingers against his shoulder before slipping out as quietly as she came. I lay there frozen, anger and dread warring in my chest. Because it wasn't about tidying. It was about claiming. She touched my things, rearranged my space, and then touched my husband, as if reminding me who he belonged to. In the morning, I said nothing. I watched Ethan eat the breakfast she set down in front of him, pancakes cut neatly into squares, butter already melting between them. He smiled at her. She smiled back, satisfied. And me? I chewed toast that tasted like cardboard, and wondered how long it would take before she decided I didn't belong in this house at all. The next few days I tried to convince myself it had been a dream, or some strange, half-awake state. I even thought maybe I had imagined Ruth entering the room, though deep down I knew I hadn't. But the more I tried to bury the memory, the more things began to pile up, little details that felt impossible to ignore. My mug disappearing before I could finish a second cup of coffee. My phone charger unplugged and neatly coiled when I had left it stretched across the floor. My shoes placed by the mudroom door in an arrangement so precise it felt almost ritualistic. Ethan brushed it all off. "She's just helpful," he said one morning, tying his tie. "You know how my mom is. She's lived here her whole life. She just has her ways." He kissed my cheek, but there was something distant about it, like he was trying to reassure himself as much as me. I tried to keep quiet. But then one afternoon, when I returned from the grocery store, I walked into our room and froze. Every drawer had been pulled open, not wide, not rummaged through, but opened a precise 3 inches, as though measured with a ruler. My clothes sat folded exactly as I had left them, but the fact they were exposed, displayed like a shop window, made my stomach twist. On the bed lay my wedding ring, perfectly centered on the comforter, gleaming in the late sunlight. I hadn't taken it off all day. "Ethan," I called, my voice cracking. He came upstairs, annoyed at first, then confused when he saw my face. "Where's your ring?" he asked. I showed him my bare finger. His mouth opened, but no words came. "You must have taken it off without realizing," he said finally, but his voice wavered. He placed the ring back in my hand. "It was probably just Mom moving it to keep it safe. Why would she come into our room and take my wedding ring off my finger?" I snapped. My pulse throbbed in my throat. Ethan ran his hand through his hair, looked at the open drawers, and said nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the occasional creak of wood as the house shifted. Around 2 in the morning, I heard it again, the faintest whisper of movement outside our door. I sat up, heart hammering, and waited. The knob turned slowly, almost tenderly. The door eased open. I held my breath as Ruth's figure appeared, silhouetted against the dim hallway light. She didn't notice I was awake. She walked straight to the dresser, adjusted a bottle, tapped her finger against the wood twice, and then turned to the bed. Her eyes swept over Ethan, then landed on me. For the briefest second, our gazes locked. My skin crawled. Instead of freezing, I whispered, "Ruth?" She didn't startle. She didn't apologize. She just smiled faintly, like I was a child who had caught her doing something harmless. "Go back to sleep, dear," she said softly, and then slipped out, closing the door behind her. In the morning, I told Ethan everything. He rubbed his eyes, tired, frustrated. "You're making this into something it isn't," he muttered. "Mom's a little strange, okay, but she isn't trying to hurt you. You've got to stop acting like she's the enemy." She was in our room. She looked right at me. She told me to go back to sleep. How is that normal? My voice cracked, but Ethan only sighed. "I'll talk to her," he said, though I doubted he would. That evening, Ruth made dinner. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. Everything perfectly portioned, placed like an exhibit. She set Ethan's plate in front of him, then Harold's, then mine. When she put mine down, she touched my hand lightly, her eyes locking on mine. "You're adjusting, aren't you?" she asked. Her tone was gentle, but the pressure of her fingers lingered too long. I forced a smile and nodded. "Yes, thank you." She smiled back, satisfied, and turned away. But the food tasted like ash in my mouth. I started keeping my belongings in my purse, zipped and tucked under the bed. But even that didn't help. One morning, I found it placed neatly on the desk, my wallet open, ID card resting on top as if displayed for inspection. I confronted Ruth again, but she only tilted her head and said, "You must have forgotten where you left it. I found it for you." Her smile never touched her eyes. By the end of the second week, I felt like I was losing my mind. Ethan worked late, Harold kept to himself, and Ruth seemed to be everywhere, watching, tidying, shifting the lines of what was mine until I didn't recognize my own life. When I mentioned it to Ethan again, his face hardened. She's my mother. She's giving us a place to stay. You could at least try to be grateful. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded and swallowed my words. But inside, something broke. Because I realized then that Ruth didn't just want me uncomfortable, she wanted me gone. And Ethan was too blind, or too loyal, to see it. That night, I locked the bedroom door for the first time. Ethan protested, but I ignored him. I needed proof, needed to feel safe. Around 2 in the morning, the doorknob rattled. Slowly, softly, like someone testing it. Then harder. The sound sent ice through my veins. I grabbed my phone and started recording, the red light glowing in the dark. The knob shook again, more insistent this time, and then stopped. Silence. In the morning, the lock had been scratched, faint lines etched into the metal as if by a nail. Ethan didn't want to see the video. You're feeding this, he said. You're turning her quirks into a monster. Stop. But I couldn't stop. Because the truth was, Ruth wasn't just moving my things. She was erasing me, piece by piece, until I barely existed in that house. And I knew if I didn't do something soon, she would succeed. I didn't sleep the night after I admitted to myself that Ruth wanted me gone. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to every small noise the house made. When morning came, I felt hollow, like fear had been eating me from the inside out. Ethan left for work, Harold disappeared into the den, and Ruth moved through the kitchen with her usual silent precision. I kept my distance, but I couldn't stop thinking about the way she stood in our room at night, arranging my things as if I didn't exist. That afternoon, when the house was empty, I wandered down to the basement. I had only been there once before to put towels in the washer, but something about the quiet space called to me. It wasn't like any basement I had ever seen. Everything was labeled, shelves of jars, stacks of linens, rows of boxes with dates carefully written on them. At the far wall stood a tall wardrobe, its louvered doors closed tight. My heart thudded as I reached for the handle. Inside were garment bags, neatly zipped and tagged with years, 2017, 2018, 2019. I hesitated, then unzipped the one marked 2019. A pale blue cardigan slid out, soft against my skin. It looked almost identical to the one I kept upstairs in our room. My hands trembled as I put it back. In the drawer below, I found a ceramic ring dish with a chipped rim. My breath caught. It was the same pattern as mine, the same pressed floral design. Only this chip was on the opposite side. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. But when I opened another drawer, I saw lipsticks in the same shades I wore, rosy shell, brick walk, lined up in a perfect row. I snapped the drawer shut, but the sound echoed through the basement. For a moment, I thought I heard footsteps overhead. My pulse thundered, but the house stayed silent. When Ethan came home that night, I wanted to tell him. I wanted to show him the ring dish, the clothes, the copies of my life stored away downstairs. But I couldn't. His face was already tight with stress, and I knew exactly what he would say. You're overreacting. Mom just saves things. And maybe he would add the part that always cut the deepest. Stop making her the enemy. That night, I placed a thin strip of tape across the doorframe before we went to bed. If the door opened, the tape would tear. Around 2 in the morning, I woke to the smell of lemon cleaner and the faint squeak of the knob turning. I kept my eyes shut, every muscle stiff with terror. The door creaked open. A shadow slipped inside. I could feel her presence, close enough to touch. Something shifted on the dresser with a soft tap. A moment later, the door closed again. When I opened my eyes, the tape was broken. In the morning, I showed Ethan the torn tape. She came in. I whispered, "Look." He rubbed his face with both hands, frustration written all over him. "You're feeding this paranoia," he said. "You're turning her quirks into monsters." "It's not paranoia if it keeps happening," I said, my voice breaking. "She's in our room at night. She's touching our things." "Stop," he said sharply, then softened when he saw the tears in my eyes. "Please. She's my mother. She's letting us stay here. Can you just try to let it go?" I couldn't. Not anymore. Because every night the evidence grew, and every morning I woke up feeling less like a wife and more like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. And deep down, I knew Ruth wasn't simply tidying. She was testing. watching, measuring how much of me this house could erase before I disappeared completely. The day after I found the wardrobe in the basement, I couldn't stop shaking. Every time I walked past Ruth in the hallway, I felt the weight of her eyes on me, calm and unbothered, as if she knew exactly what I had seen and was only waiting for me to make the next move. My mind kept circling back to the duplicate cardigan, the lipsticks, the chipped ring dish that wasn't mine but felt like it was meant to be. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't escape the idea that Ruth had been collecting pieces of the women who came before me, storing them away like exhibits in a private museum. That evening at dinner, the silence was unbearable. Harold ate quickly and excused himself. Ruth carved the roast into perfect slices and placed one on Ethan's plate, then mine. Her hand brushed my wrist, and I nearly dropped the fork. "You're eating so little," she said softly. "Do you not feel at home yet?" Ethan looked between us, uncomfortable. "She's fine, Mom. Please don't." "I'm fine," I interrupted quickly, forcing myself to smile. "Dinner's great." The food was tasteless in my mouth, every bite weighed down with the knowledge of what I had seen. I couldn't bring myself to tell Ethan at the table. Ruth's gaze never left me, not even when she spoke to him. Later that night, I tried again. I told Ethan about the wardrobe, about the clothes and the ring dish, about how everything looked like it belonged to me, but wasn't. His expression hardened. "You were snooping through my parents' basement?" he said, disbelief turning to anger. "Do you realize how crazy that sounds?" "Crazy." My voice cracked. "Ethan, she's copying me. She's keeping pieces of the women who came before me. What happens when she decides I don't belong here anymore? Do I just end up in one of those garment bags too?" "Stop." He ran a hand down his face, exhausted. "She saves things. She's always been like that. You're turning it into something it isn't. You need to calm down." "I can't calm down when she's breaking into our room every night." I snapped. The words were louder than I intended, echoing off the walls. For a moment, Ethan just stared at me, the weight of my desperation sinking in. Then he lowered his voice. "If you keep talking like this, you're going to drive me away." Those words cut deeper than Ruth ever could. I turned away before he could see the tears spill. For the rest of the night, we lay back to back in bed, the silence between us heavier than any argument. The following afternoon, I tried to avoid Ruth, but she found me in the kitchen. She set a folded box on the counter, her movements precise as always. "I thought this might help," she said. Inside the box were my belongings, my book, my lotion, the sweater I left draped over the chair, all neatly stacked together, as if packed for a move. "This way, we don't misplace anything." I stared at the box, then at her. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. My voice shook, but I forced myself to meet her gaze. "Why are you trying to erase me?" Her smile was small and practiced. "Erase you? No, dear. I'm protecting the house. You'll understand eventually." "I'll never understand," I whispered. "Because this isn't protection. This is control." Her eyes hardened just slightly. "Chaos is dangerous. I won't let it take root here. Not again." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but the words froze in my throat. Instead, I carried the box upstairs and dumped everything back in its place. I left the empty box by the door like a challenge, daring her to try again. That night, I refused to sleep. I sat in the chair by the window, waiting. Around 2 in the morning, the doorknob turned. The door creaked open, and Ruth's face appeared in the gap. She didn't flinch when she saw me watching her. She only tilted her head, studying me like I was another misplaced object. "We need rules," she said softly. "We already have rules," I shot back. "You just don't follow mine." She didn't reply. She closed the door and left, the lemon-scented air lingering behind her like a ghost. I stayed awake until dawn, my chest tight with the knowledge that the war between us was no longer silent. The next day, I decided to gather proof. If Ethan wouldn't believe my words, maybe he would believe what he saw. I set up my phone on the dresser, angled toward the door, and hit record. I left the screen dimmed, the lens hidden behind a stack of books. Then I waited. At exactly 2:13, the door opened. Ruth slipped inside. She moved to the dresser, straightened the bottles, turned the ring dish so the chip faced away, and smoothed the blanket at the foot of the bed. Then she leaned over Ethan, brushing his shoulder lightly with her fingertips. My stomach turned as I watched it through half-closed eyes. She lingered a moment longer, then left the room as silently as she had come. In the morning, I showed Ethan the video. My hands trembled as I pressed play. He watched in silence, jaw clenched, lips pressed tight. When it ended, he looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me again. She probably just wanted to check on us, he muttered weakly. Check on us. I whispered, anger and fear rising together. At 2 in the morning? Touching you in your sleep? Ethan, this isn't normal. Please, tell me you see it now. He didn't answer right away. He sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. I'll talk to her, he said finally. His voice was quiet, uncertain, like a man walking into a storm. But deep down, I knew talking wouldn't be enough. Because Ruth didn't think she was doing anything wrong. To her, this was all order, structure. And in her structure, there was no space for me to exist as myself. That evening the air in the house felt thick, like the walls themselves were listening. Ethan barely spoke during dinner. Harold retreated into his den almost immediately. Ruth sat across from me, her eyes calm, her hands folded neatly in her lap, but I could feel the tension radiating between us. It was as if we both knew the game was nearly over, and only one of us could remain standing when it ended. After dinner, I went upstairs before anyone else. I sat on the bed, staring at the broken strip of tape still clinging to the doorframe, the silent proof of every intrusion. I kept telling myself that tonight I would lock the door and not open it again, no matter what. But even as I thought it, a part of me knew it wouldn't be that simple. Ruth didn't respect locks. She respected nothing but her own order. When Ethan finally came up, I confronted him. Did you talk to her? I asked. My voice was sharper than I intended. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples. I tried, he said. She doesn't think she's doing anything wrong. She just says she's keeping the house safe. He looked at me, eyes tired. I don't know what to do. Then we have to leave, I whispered. The words felt both terrifying and liberating. We can't stay here. She won't stop until there's nothing left of me. His silence was worse than anger. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. And that silence told me exactly how deep Ruth's hold on him still was. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of footsteps. This time, they weren't careful. They were deliberate. I shook Ethan awake, but he groaned and rolled over. My heart slammed against my ribs as the footsteps climbed the stairs, one by one. The knob turned. The door opened, and Ruth stepped inside, carrying the empty box I had left by the door. She set it on the dresser with quiet precision. You'll feel better if everything is in its place, she said softly. No, I whispered, standing up. My legs trembled, but I forced myself forward, putting myself between her and the dresser. This stops now. You don't get to decide where I belong. Not in this room. Not in this house. Not in this marriage. Her eyes flicked toward Ethan, still half asleep in the bed. He doesn't mind, she said. He never has. Why do you fight what makes things easier? Because I'm not just another one of your projects, I snapped. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. I'm not a list on one of your cards. I'm not a ring dish in a drawer. I'm his wife, and you can't erase me. For the first time, her expression shifted. The calm cracked, just slightly, enough for me to see the steel underneath. You think you're the first to say that? She murmured. The others thought so too, but they didn't last. The blood drained from my face. What happened to them? I demanded. My voice was shaking, but the question hung in the air like smoke. They left, she said, but the way she said it made my skin crawl. She stepped closer, the lemon scent suffocating. Do you know why they left? Because they couldn't follow the rules. They couldn't keep order. And order is the only thing that keeps this house alive. Behind me, Ethan stirred. His voice was groggy, uncertain. Mom, what are you doing? Ruth didn't look at him. She looked only at me. Decide, she said softly. Will you stay and fit? Or will you go and be forgotten? My throat closed, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I turned to Ethan, desperate. Do you hear her? Do you finally hear her? I pleaded. She wants me gone. He sat up slowly, staring between us. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. Mom, is that true? He asked quietly. Ruth smiled, gentle and patient. I only want what's best for the house, she said. For you. And for me. I whispered. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. If you fit. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed again, caught between blood and marriage, between comfort and truth. And in that silence, I realized the choice wasn't his to make. It was mine. I pushed the box off the dresser. It hit the floor with a hollow thud, echoing through the house. I don't fit, I said, my voice breaking but clear. And I never will. Ruth's eyes narrowed, the first true flash of anger I'd ever seen in her. For a heartbeat, I thought she might strike me, but instead she stepped back, her calm mask sliding back into place. Then you'll leave, she said. Like all the others. She turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind her, as if nothing had happened. Ethan sat frozen on the bed, staring at me like I was a stranger. I sank onto the chair by the window, trembling, my chest aching with the weight of everything unsaid. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. Maybe Ethan will choose me. Maybe he won't. Maybe Ruth is right, and the house only has room for people who fit her version of order. But as I sit here, watching the door, I can't stop wondering. If she's already packed away pieces of the women before me, how long before someone finds a box with my name written on it too?